Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying!
Yes, guys, and welcome to another episode of Scouted. And I am here with a different inflection. I tried to do the whole Alex thing, and I don't know if it's working out for me quite as well, but I'm here with my boy, my fellow nerd, Mr. Rohan Jivan. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing fantastic outside the fact that I have no internet right now, which is a joke. And so we're on the hotspot.
Yes,
and the hotspot held up very well, didn't it, George, on the Patreon?
It did brilliantly. I mean, despite little lorry-esque impact on those wires, you know, you can't account for the lorries, those bloody lorries, as they say, at your end. But look, we are here. Let's just get right into it. I am very excited for this player. I have had kind of an evolution with this player. I think that this is a player that, you know, I had previous concerns about, you know, some of his ability to hold onto the ball too long. Has really evolved into a player I really, really like. And you know what? This is probably the first player that we're going to discuss on the Scouted that probably has universal acceptance from every single Arsenal fan in the fan base, which is very rare. And if you can do that, you've got to be a special player. We are, of course, here to talk about Eberechi Eze. As we pull up kind of our summary of the player here, and we're going to talk over it. Rohan, why don't you give me a first kind of pick? And, you know, one of Alex's favorite phrases is, okay, what do you say to somebody who is basically never watched football a day in their life, an alien, come back down, sees Eberechi Eze, and he needs to learn about the player? Tell me what you feel this player does for Arsenal and who he is.
Okay, so I would say with Eberechi Eze is that he epitomizes the beauty of football. You know, how do you like that one? So for me, it's just a player who I think, you know, when we talk about football being fun and an enjoyment and being a spectacle, Eze is that type of player who will get you off your seat, and he brings that sort of energy in terms of the 1v1 capacity in all areas, the ball striking ability, how comfortable he is in central areas in terms of receiving, turning, then facing play, and making something happen. That is Eze to a T. And I've kind of used this a lot now, and I'll say it again. He is a Wenger-coded type player, you know, to a T. When you think of Arsene Wenger, you know, like back in the day when we went to the transition of the Fabregases, the Nasris, the Lebs, etc., it's about getting these players centrally, allowing them to do their thing because they're so good in these areas. Eze is someone who strikes me as that type. And for me, as you've alluded to, if there's a player who the fan base, everyone is in unison of, it's Eze. Everybody wants him because the quality is undeniable. Prime age, being an Arsenal fan as well, I think these things matter. And it just feels like his journey in which, you know, he was rejected as a youth player to now coming back, prime age, prime time. I just think that journey and that story, it's really, really exciting outside of just the undeniable quality that he possesses.
I think this is a player who has gone through the football journey, in a sense, you know, has really had to work to get to where he is at. And he's now evolved into a player that I think is incredibly mature, adds something of maybe one of the best decision-making in transition in the league, adds one of the better shooters outside the box as far as attacking midfielders go. His first time finishing is phenomenal in the box from cutbacks. Maybe needs a little bit more time and technique in terms of when he's trying to find finishes that require 1-2 touch. He has a tendency to potentially still hold on to the ball a little bit too much, but he's really ironed out that part of his game for me. And like you mentioned, this is a true playmaking maverick for me. Right? Like he's got pretty much every, you know, pass in his locker as far as a Trivela on the run in between bodies in terms of being able to have kind of that 360 vision in the pocket where if he's receiving at the top of the box, he can one touch back heel into, you know, a Mateta who's running on in behind. This is a player that I think is incredibly inventive and, you know, somebody that at the same time also has quite a bit of function out of possession as too. Like I would say that this is somebody who is absolutely able to harry. The only thing is I think when you're looking at the out of possession, if you're competing in bigger distances, this is where something that Eze can struggle. And he has shown an ability to be a little bit complacent in build up as far as some of the passing. If it's not 1-2 touch, it can be a little bit rushed. It can be a little bit inconsistent in terms of if he's asked to do some of those things, but he absolutely carries that big final third impact. And as far as having that endurance in the carry, where he can carry really large distances and still produce a powerful shot, that's just something that Eze is incredibly good at. I mean, you made a comparison to Jack Grealish at Villa in terms of some of the role similarities and in terms of some of even the transferable qualities that both of those have. For you, if I was to like just put you on the spot, what are some of the weaknesses that you'd like Eberechi Eze to maybe have to deal with if he was coming to Arsenal, whether that's player skill, role, fit? Where do you stand on some of the challenges with Eze after we've talked about some of the strengths?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it a lot more in depth in the Patreon video, where I think his capacity in terms of pinning players back to goal when we're talking about these balls lumped into him, he's not very strong at that, and it kind of makes you realise just how good Bukayo Saka is in that regard, in terms of that ability to roll fullbacks, roll centre-backs, variable balls, that Raya long ball. And Saka is fantastic at being able to take that ball and either win a foul or turn his marker, then face play and make something happen. Eze is not that type of player right now. And I would say that is a very clear weakness, and we saw it in the clips that it was a prevalent feature to his game when these balls were directed into him. And the other thing I would say, which is maybe unfair to categorize as a specific weakness for Eze because I've not seen it, but I think for me it's the case of like Crystal Palace play a completely different way to Arsenal in terms of when you talk about off the ball. Palace are a team that sit off. They screen as opposed to pressing high in the way that Arsenal do. And that's why you see Eze in terms of, if you look at the numbers, Eze is fantastic at blocking off passes. And that's because of the role that he has at Palace. And it's the same with Sarr. It's the same with Mateta as well. But the idea of going from that to a team that is non-stop, high press, high energy, with a lot of different demands, that's something that Eze is going to need to learn. And I think for me, that's something where I look at Eze and I think the quality is undeniable. And we've seen it with Declan Rice again, where the quality is undeniable. But these players require time because of the clear difference in the way that the two teams are playing. In Rice's case, it was West Ham to Arsenal, and Eze's potential case, Palace to Arsenal. And I think that's why I'd like to see more of him in that aspect to see if it is a weakness or not. So,
yeah, it's a very interesting thing because, like you said, he's coming from a team that don't do the same things that we do, but he's also an incredibly intelligent footballer. Yeah. Like, I think one of the biggest things that you need to look at with Eze is, there's this whole chess thing that's going around in terms of Arsenal recruiting chess players, but just genuinely, he's somebody that takes really supreme care of his pass and his surroundings and his ability to impact the game. And he's got phenomenal vision. So from my perspective, he's somebody that thinks quite a bit about his actions, has a lot of intention behind them. So it's somebody that clearly cares about that. And I think that it wouldn't be difficult with the type of character he is to see him excel in Arsenal, but there is a lot of information to take on. There's a lot of revision that he will need to do in terms of some of the complex pressing triggers that we may demand for him, in the left central midfield. But as we transition, let's have a look at some of the stats I'm going to pull up in the meantime as I'm talking here. Mate, it's kind of strange, but I don't know if his stats scream elite in the same way. But what do you make kind of, just slowly, like we're looking at some of the non-penalty goals. I did talk about how he might be due a goal explosion. You can see he's somebody that takes a phenomenal amount of shots. But when you have a look at, some of the goals that he's looking at, it's pretty poor, but also some of the non-penalty XG, it's decent. It's a lot better than his output. He's definitely underperforming some of the XG that he's been able to do. But when I have a look at it, this is a guy that's creating very good shot creating actions, but in terms of some of the output, it's not screaming off the page. What do you make of his goal scoring potential?
Yeah, I think for me, it's again a case of when you consider the way that Palace play in comparison to Arsenal, we're talking about a team from a Palace point of view that is not possession-based to a team that, from an Arsenal perspective, is possession-based in a variety of different ways. And I just think that increase in the number of touches, the number of involvement that it would have, I think, as you alluded to in the video, this is a player who could be doing explosion. because of the significant difference that you do see in terms of how the two teams play and some of the sequences that we look to try and create. I mean, we've mentioned it many times in terms of that first time finish just outside the edge of the box, the ability to find both the far or the near post. He's fantastic at that, especially when, like Palace do, funneling the ball down the right-hand side with Munoz providing the width high and carrying, and then Eze there to finish centrally or closer towards the left-hand side. I think at Arsenal, when you consider, for example, like the sequence that we have where we've got players in the box, it doesn't matter who it is, it will be a group who are pushing that line deeper. Mm-hmm. It opens up the space just outside the edge of the box. Luis Enrique, by the way, there's a really interesting video of him talking about how he advocated shots just outside the edge of the box against Barcelona 2 years ago because of how much they sink deep inside their own box. Again, a team like Arsenal, you're going to be able to have that space just on the edge. We've seen it with Declan Rice against Newcastle, against Manchester United as well. Eze would be fantastic in that regard, and I see real potential there. So I think the other aspect of some of the numbers that you see here in terms of his pass completion, this is really good to show why stats shouldn't be judged in isolation, George, because you'd look at it right here and the pass completion is really poor. But then you have to sit back and understand, okay, why is it poor? It's because Eze is the linchpin for Palace. He is the guy who's taking the responsibility. And with that comes an attitude that isn't circumspect. It's an attitude that is looking to make things happen. And with that sort of mindset, you're going to give the ball away. So, and that's where it goes back to, translating that mindset at an Arsenal where you are not going to be just the main guy. You're going to be in a group with a lot of other players who are the stars as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just find like the fact that he's receiving such few progressive passes and yet has such high successful takes on kind of points to the responsibility a little bit. I'm with you. I think like these passing numbers are more a reflection of Palace in terms of how they play a little bit more on the counterattack, and they're more a team that likes to go back to front quite quickly as opposed to put their foot on the ball and progress play into the final third. That's kind of more of a reflection as opposed to his abilities here. And when we're kind of going off into kind of some of the possession stuff, it doesn't look great. And, I think the one thing that really strikes it clear to me is kind of this aerial one idea, whereas his stronger things are a little bit more in tackles and blocks, and that's a little, again, more to do with the way that Palace seem to defend. I mean, they're a lot more of a zonal team in general, right? Like their whole idea is to shield and move the block in that way, isn't it? And so he's not really put in positions to win tackles, but when he is, he does win them. And I think he's actually quite a strong tackler in isolation. It's just more about how we're going to see him transition kind of into Arsenal and kind of that. We are going to jump to the tactical board again as I go, and I'm going to just bear with me here. I'm doing okay on tack.
You are doing fantastic, guys, mate. Absolutely fantastic.
So as we go, we look into kind of how we see Eze going. We might differ in terms of what we might prefer. I'll walk through it, and then I'm going to let you take over here. So this is how you feel Eze can be maximized in this Arsenal team right now. Eze off the left wing, and we've got Calafiori at left back, Declan Rice. This is kind of our starting 11 as we see it currently. Of course, we have Gyökeres, and we'll talk about some of the impact that might have here, but just walk me through this starting 11. Do you feel that this is our starting 11 genuinely for, the Manchester United, let's call it, if we were to get Eze in, assuming he's all up to date and whatnot? Is this your most talented first 11? Is this what you like to see if he came in?
I mean, I guess for me, I think we're approaching a situation and a season in which I think you're going to see a lot of changes, and hopefully Mikel be a lot more open to making changes in the starting 11. I felt like last season he was forced to make changes, whereas his time so far at Arsenal, I think I would say one of my critiques of Mikel is the rotation and the ability to kind of manage the team and the squad. But if you told me this was our starting 11 against Manchester United, I'd be very confident. And for me, I think when I consider Arsenal in its current iteration, and I want to mention the fact that Arsenal under Mikel have changed time and time again in terms of how the team evolves. But if I'm looking at it from the mindset of, let's assuming Arsenal not changing in terms of specific roles, where we're talking about right centre mid, left wing, this is where I'd see Eze at his best right now in terms of being on the left wing nominally, but you've got someone like Calafiori joining high to give you that width situationally, and that allows Eze to come more inside, in which he can do his best work, which is where he does his best work, in central spaces in terms of receiving the ball between the defensive and midfield line and then making something happen. And it's very much in the sense of that Emile Smith-Rowe, Kieran Tierney type dynamic that we had previously, which I feel Eze would do really well in. But all in all, I do believe when I look at Eze, and the phrase that I always want to reiterate is it's plug and play. I think Eze is someone who could come into various different roles to combat different game states, and he could give Arsenal serious quality in things that we've lacked previously. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't disagree too often, to be honest with you. I think that we have got a little bit of potential here to even have kind of a situation in which you can still have Calafiori. There is a potential, of course, to have the Martin Odegaard aspect where we could see a difference in terms of, sorry, not Miles, but we could look at, Martinelli have a little bit more of risk here, where I'm looking at having a Martinelli maybe operate a little bit more in the box, and you still have Eze, who's more of this floating 10 kind of in theory for it. And, you either, look, you can have Calafiori here, but he's got like an ability to kind of go either side of the pitch for me and really be that true 10. Because when we look at it from a defensive point of view, I think that you're looking at more of an instance of this so-called 4-2-4 mentality, in which you've got something like this in defense with both Eze and Havertz kind of operating a little bit more in this mold right here. And I think that this breaks out quite easily, where if you have everybody high up the pitch and you've got Martinelli out here and Eze, depending on where the ball is, if the ball's on the left with Zubimendi, he'll cheat over here. And then if the ball's on the right, with Declan Rice, Eze can cheat in here. He can find through balls here. I do find that Eze is maybe less of an overlap here. So if you wanted to stretch that and have Eze a little bit more in the pocket, who could cheat left, by the way, have Saka on the inside, I may look towards more of this iteration with Ben White. And then maybe I'd ask to kind of switch some of the intentions with Miles a little bit more of that defensive solidity. So then you're kind of talking about a Ben White in this mold. And, you're looking at Eze being able to cheat a little bit. The only thing that I probably get frustrated is with this intention, you're kind of looking at a little bit more of a Gabriel central center back that I don't love, ideally. But you are looking at this flexibility that you have this kind of intention. We don't have to do this. We can even have Martin Odegaard play against like deep blocks. I'm having a look at, again, let's get our Timber in and we can have our fullbacks in here. We'll throw in Martin Odegaard. And I'm having a look at a player who, for low blocks, by the way, I feel this gives Arsenal a different level of potency in terms of creativity, in terms of function, in terms of being able to really see some brilliant, middle third control, whilst also being able to be inventive, in possession. We're looking at this kind of, function right now. And I see a lot of ability here to thrive.
It's just a variety, isn't it, George? The variety in which we can use Eze and this. I think that's why I've always thought of Eze. It's a skills gap type signing for me, as opposed to an actual specific role as of today. I think when we look at Arsenal, what do Arsenal lack? It's the ability to carry through the thirds with power, not having enough of that type. It's the ability to generate 1v1s in different areas of the pitch. It's the transition quality. It's what he offers in the final third, how comfortable he is in central areas. These are things that Arsenal need more of, and Eze will provide us with that. And I think that's where the excitement comes.
Absolutely. And he gives us a level of flexibility for me that kind of means that we can operate in so many different ways, right? Like we can operate with mentions of left wing. We can operate through the middle. We can operate with Odegaard. We can operate without Odegaard. We have another option who for me is brilliant in terms of coaching, are young 8-10s and Max and Ethan, who are 18 and 15 respectively. This is a guy who's 27. By the time he's 30, 31, and we're looking to look at transitions, these guys are 21.
Exactly.
These guys are 20. I don't see the same blocking that a lot of people do see potentially with some of the squad building. And I probably want to end on this. What do you make of the deal? Because for me, I feel that this deal could heal a lot of people's fears in terms of what the recruitment has looked like, where you're trying to understand it, but without an Eze, you struggle to, if that makes sense, with the collection of what we've done. Where do you stand on the potential deal, £68 million release clause that can be broken up into 3 £20 million installments, the potential to add a player? Is he worth it? Is Eze worth the value that Palace will likely demand? And what do you think he could be for Arsenal as far as, is this like a needle mover, an undeniable starting 11 upgrade? Is this somebody that we all love him for what he looks like? And I think we all have a subjective bias to what a Wenger-looking player looks like. But removing that, do you feel that this is a talent that can take Arsenal to the next level and start to say things like, we will win the Premier League with this type of talent?
Yeah, I mean, you and Alex know me, where I've always looked at it from a skills gap point of view, but also someone who has undeniable quality. And I think with Eze, when you break it down, it's a lot of money, but it's about time Arsenal did spend a lot of money on the forward line in the attacking areas, right? And I think for me, the point that you made about, this deal effectively giving us a lot more of a positive look on the window in terms of our attacking signings is a very strong one. Whereas right now, I'd say it looks quite clear. Victor Gyökeres is going to be coming in. Madueke will be announced very soon as well. I think people can stomach the Madueke signing if it is facilitated with someone like an Eze, whereas without an Eze, you then start to see more question marks in terms of, okay, is this really the direction that we're looking to take? So I think this Eze deal kind of takes the window for a lot of people from like a 7 to an 8, or if you're being a little bit more critical, like a 6/6.5 to a high 7, that sort of type. I think that's what Eze does essentially. And I think for me, the quality is undeniable. I've said it many times. I think this is someone who's going to add a lot of things that this team lacks. And it's difficult to remove that emotional attachment, but even when you do remove it, it makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons that you can certainly see from the video that we did.
I do want to talk emotional. I'm so nerdy sometimes that I think that it can go away, but like a cultural fit is huge. Like there are players that you look at and you just say like they are the club. Like for example, I look at that false 9 who likes to come in, and Liverpool is somebody that made that role very exciting. You look at even Arsenal, like Eze is one of those close combo, inventive type players. The pass and move, the game will flow through him, and you see that as a potential fit to the club, to the fans. And I don't think a club should ever sign to fan wants.
Yeah,
but I do look at the overall forward, where if I was to tell you Gyökeres, Madueke, Eze, I would say at the very least, I'm confident that that's the very least starting 11 upgrade with the potential for 2 in terms of Gyökeres, in terms of what he's able to translate and whatnot. And you're looking at a collection of players that really, despite kind of preferences you might have on players, that's a collection of 2 win now forwards and a project who isn't even, a project in that sense, because we've seen sample in the
someone
Premier
who could
League.
explode.
Like there's a certain, but there is that potential, right? But they're all examples of players that we know what we're getting.
Yeah.
There isn't necessarily the debate as to whether or not they're complete. And so it's a very different window to the Sesko Nico Williams debates.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of, the type of player that we're getting. If you could tie a bow on what that recruitment looks like for me with Eze, those 3 in the forward areas, where would you be at in terms of your confidence? Would we have done the work in the attacking areas that you would have hoped before the summer, if that ends up being the outcome?
I think, if you'd asked any Arsenal fan going into the window and their preferences going into the season in terms of what they would have liked to have seen across the forward areas, I think the choices that we've made a lot of people wouldn't have thought of. I think people were very big on Gyökeres, to be fair. And I'll be honest, I didn't expect Arsenal to go along this route, but I've always said I'm very open-minded in terms of adding skills and quality that this team does lack. And I think for me, I don't believe Arsenal are far away from winning the Premier League or winning the Champions League as well. We've shown that. We saw it with Mikel Merino as our number 9, at the Bernabeu at Paris Saint-Germain, in which we were tactically top. It's that difference in the final touch, final action that let us down. And I feel we've improved significantly, I'd say, in terms of the numbers that we've added and the players there. So I'd be happy. But I also think it's very unfair to kind of critique someone who didn't think of a Gyökeres or an Eze but now is on board with that idea. It's when you research the players, when you understand what they bring, you then start to get that clarity, don't you? And I'd be very happy with it for sure.
I think I've kind of said this before. My biggest unification about this is the endurance in long carries that result in a powerful shot. I think that's something that those three have done phenomenally well. And I'm somebody that wanted 3 attackers, that insisted on 3 attackers, and I've got 3 attackers. Again, I may have different preferences, but for me, there are a lot of skills that these 3 add, particularly in how we talk about transitions. As somebody who coined the term transition inevitability, I think that we've absolutely done the right method physically in terms of recruiting players that attack space relentlessly.
Adding pace, isn't it, George? A lot of pace. Yeah.
Lot of pace, and people that want to attack the space. Madueke, Gyökeres, Eze. They're all players that their first thought is, let me attack open spaces with drive and intention, and they do it again and again. Things may not always come off for all of these players, but their intent is, I don't care. I will keep going and keep going and keep going. And that is about the Eze. And I'll end on this. To me, Eze represents not just the perfect bow, but again, he almost makes the picture that we've painted fit the frame that we need it to go in. So there's been a lot of talk where, okay, I can understand Norgard if. I can understand the decision to go from Garcia to Kepa if. I can understand the pursuit of Nani Madueke if. If is carrying a lot of weight in a lot of these statements. And so we do need something. And I will end on this. I think the profile comparison really matches to me. Like, you've got a runner on the left and a creator on the left in options. You've got an 8-10 who is a little bit more like Martin Odegaard, who drops out of the block, operates in middle third, and a transition 8-10 with output in Eze. You look on the right, you've got a Nani Madueke, who could be a runner off the ball and a touchline option, and a Bukayo Saka, who can be both. You look at the forward areas, Gyökeres, Havertz, you start to see different intentions. Gyökeres is a little bit more of that runner into the channels, who may not compete with pinning center backs that Havertz can a little bit more. You talk about an ability to really change this team depending on the opposition. And it puts a lot of pressure on Mikel to actually do those changes. Like, now we have them. Okay, now we can't talk about not having options. Now it really asks questions about our management of the squad in a different way, especially with, I would argue, no matter what, the club did back him in terms of the forward recruitment. Like, you can't say, when you start to look at some of this stuff with an Eze, you're starting to look at, what is that, mate? Like 168 or 150 million pounds at least. Right? 52 on Madueke, Gyökeres 69 million, Eze 68. You're looking at 170 million worth of attacking talent that you've had. So that's your team. And I'm excited to see it, mate. I think that Eze could be phenomenal. And I will go on record to say, if we did go and get Eze, I think he could go another level with Arsenal. I think the idea of going from a Palace where he knows he's the MVP and has to be, into a team where he may not be the best player, and may still be, by the way. He's that talented. However, it's not confirmed, will make him go to another level. And I'm excited to see that, hopefully. So this is a player we both like. Rohan, thank you so much for joining with me.
Always a pleasure. Loved it.
And guys, make sure that you guys go down in the description down below and look and check out the Patreon, which you can access for a 7-day free trial, in which we break down really specific clips about Eze, both out of possession, in possession, passing, goals, defensive ability, aerial ability, with actual video clips that we can't show here on YouTube. And of course, stick with us because we've got plenty of stuff going on in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be ramping up the content. We've got the main pod that you all love, the reintroduction of instant reactions, rewatches, the whole likes. And of course, if you do sign up to Patreon, we would love you. Even if you'd like to sign up to subscribe, we would still love you. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for all the support. And remember, thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying. Electrifying. Inspiration.